Welcome to our sales conversation, another journey into urgency-based selling, bold vision, bold behavior. Today's topic is reviving lost customers, getting the second chance. The motivation behind this webinar was a client, a 100-year-old company that over the years, they had lost a good number of customers, and now today, lost customers represented a very big part of their potential audience. So one day I was making cold calls on customers, on lost customers, and one buyer reluctantly brought us in for a call. The salesperson said to the owner of the company, "So, how does it look? How can we do some business together?" And the owner said, "There's no way I'm going to do business." But the salesperson really wasn't asking the challenging question. So the challenging question was, "Why aren't you doing business?" Which is what I asked. Well, I guess the owner brought us in because he really wanted to express himself, and he said, "I'll tell you why we're not doing business. Back in 2007, when there was a credit crunch, you cut me off, and I was in dire straits, for trade credit. And your competitor stepped up to the plate, and they doubled our credit line, and they took us through the period until we got, stable again. And right now, my business is booming, and why the heck should I give you any business?" This is what he said. I'm thinking to myself, wow, I agree with this guy. I mean, I see it the same way. But the assignment that day was to try to help bring the customer back into the fold. So I asked this question: do you believe in second chances? And the owner of the company got kind of quiet and is a little subdued, and his face changed, and he said, yeah, he did believe in second chances. And that set up my next question, which is, how do we earn the right to a second chance? And he told us, right? Now, isn't it true that, many or most of us have benefited during our lives from getting a second chance? And it's almost like part of the fabric that connects us to each other. So the rest of this seminar is pretty much about preparing to ask that question. And then, after we ask the question, if they're playing ball, how do we move the conversation forward? I mean, clearly we had to show genuine remorse, show the prospect that we care, and we have to encourage them to talk. This is a hard thing to do so that they feel heard. And, we shouldn't be surprised if it's not one and done. It takes time. There's a sense of grieving going on here. Now, the material on this slide comes from a book called On Death and Dying, and it talks about the grieving process. So when we start talking to someone who's really unhappy about, how we've done, they don't need us. They're satisfied without us. And if we start giving them reasons to reconnect, they could actually get annoyed at us and have closed mindset. So a way to visualize our assignment is to take them around the curve to exploration, to learning mindset, to learn what do we have to share, how have we changed, how have we gotten better, and how can we make a difference in their lives. So this is a challenge, and again, it's not necessarily one and done, bringing them from resistance to open mindset. Let's go back to 1985 and the second chance theme. Do you remember a marketing disaster back in 1985? Well, Coke was losing market share to Pepsi, and so they did market research, and they developed a new preferred formula, and they brought it out. It was New Coke. And with a lot of fanfare and marketing support, they brought it out, and what happened? It was rejected by the consumer. Well, 3 months later, this was a marketing fiasco. 3 months later, they came back out with Classic Coke, and the public forgave them, and they got a second chance because they had a good relationship. So what are some of the keys to the second chance? I mean, Coke obviously listened to the customer. They took prompt corrective action. The action involved innovation, which we'll discuss, and they cashed in on a long-term relationship they have built to earn the right to the second chance. Now, broadly speaking, there are three sales we need to make: the salesperson sale, the offer sale, and the company sale. I think in this case, Coca-Cola had a very strong relationship with the brand and with the company that they had built over 100 years. And because they had taken care of their customers historically, they got a second chance. And therefore, when they came out with the new product, which was the new offer, new Classic Coke, it was received. Now, this is a big company scenario. For small and medium-sized businesses, the role of the salesperson is usually much stronger. I'm going to turn to that in a minute. But before we go there, just another couple of words on the case. How did Coke last over 140 years? This is a very long product and company life cycle. They built relationships that have been, intergenerational with families, and in large part, it's through nonstop innovation. Coca-Cola used to have cocaine in it. Formulation has changed. Packaging went from dispensed in a drugstore when it had cocaine to glass bottles to cans to plastic. Distribution went from drugstores, supermarkets, convenience stores, and maybe of equal importance, the advertising has changed over the year to create a strong emotional bond. So innovation was critical. As you approach the idea of the second chance, you might want to be thoughtful about what is your innovation program. Now, my standard on innovation is I try to test 2 new ideas a week with risk that I can absorb. I test a lot, and probably most of them wind up in the garbage can. The good ones I teach my clients. The 16-week innovation sprint. I had a client who had assigned 2 whale prospects per salesperson. There was radio silence. In most cases, we needed the second chance. They weren't talking to us. So every week for 16 weeks, I had a one-on-one call, discussion with the salesperson about the 2 whale prospects. And if what we did in the previous week didn't work, we invented a new idea. We did this 16 weeks. There had to be at least a dozen second chance scenarios there. And by the way, we use some of the tools that I will review with you in this webinar. What was the outcome? We connected with 80% of these top-level decision makers, and we received orders. So when you set up an innovation program, you're actually planning for the second chance. There was another outcome from this case history. Many of the salespeople coming into this, we're going after these whales, it's impossible. We're saying things like there's nothing we could do. And after we did 16 weeks of innovation, no salesperson could say, there's nothing I could do, because we had 16 different techniques that we had worked out. And I think it further led to the idea there's always something you could do. Now, one way to innovate. This is a question that focuses my thinking on innovation. If everything I'm doing doesn't achieve my goal, what's my next move, with lots of out-of-the-box thinking? The 75-week program. Here's a personal case where I was invited in by a prospect, big operation, 100 salespeople. I thought we were going to do a program, and then blew up. Decided not to go ahead, radio silence. How do I get a second chance? For the next 75 weeks, I sent a new idea to the owner of this business every single week. It was almost total radio silence for that period. Once or twice, he commented. At the end of the period, this owner sent me an email that something like this: Andy, I didn't read everything you sent me, but everything I read seemed pretty interesting, and I have to conclude, where there's smoke, there's fire. So he invited me in, multi-year program that flowed out of that. Now, for small and medium-sized businesses, the salesperson is really the key, both to initiating the relationship and getting back in with the second chance. So if the salesperson doesn't close the first sale, which means closing on themselves, then we usually don't get a chance to make the offer sale and the company sale. And by the way, with big companies, it's usually the brand that's leading, whereas with small and medium-sized companies, not as well branded, the key is the salesperson. So to get all in on the second chance, you really need all three sales. And what I'd like to do for a few minutes is look at the salesperson's brand, do a little deeper dive on the salesperson's brand. What is your brand for selling? You know, to get the second chance, you typically need to be multifaceted. Now, the ideas I'm going to share with you came from me when I was on a tour on the big island of Hawaii. And the tour guide was telling us how there are like 14 meteorological, whatever, topological zones. And what made the big island so unique in part is 12 of them were on that island, you know, with deserts and ice from the mountains. And as this guide was talking, I was thinking to myself, wow, isn't that like an effective salesperson's brand? It has all these qualities to it. And you're going to need probably most of these qualities if you're going in for the second chance when you've been tossed out. So here on the screen, I've given you a list of a whole bunch of qualities. By the way, if you want this or anything else, you know, send me an email afterwards. But you might do a gap analysis and ask yourself, can I do better in any of these areas that I'm doing right now? And in particular, as an idea person, particularly as an idea person. Now, what you really want to bring into the second chance scenario is type 3 knowledge. Type 1 is what you know, type 2 is what the customer knows they don't know, and type 3 is what they don't realize they don't know. And that's really the money question. So as you prepare for any sales call, but particularly as you're preparing for the second chance scenario, I would ask myself, what wisdom are you bringing to this situation? Now, when I'm selling, you know, I have implemented this program, urgency-based selling, over 170 times in the last 30 years. So like when I sell or when I prepare a webinar like this, I'm sharing with you my learnings from all this experience. And you ideally will do the same thing in your company. And if you're kind of new, well, you know, you got to talk to people who have more experience, because the challenge we're facing can be represented by this visual. We've been tossed out in the second chance scenario. Our competitor is probably seen as a trusted advisor. And you know, like they're on the top of the soccer field that's tilted, and they could roll the ball downhill, and we have to kick the ball uphill. This is really tough. We need to level the playing field. And coming in with wisdom as a trusted advisor is a way to create a relationship before experience, before you're back in the door. Now, even if a prospect's not ready to buy, they might talk to you if you come with wisdom, if you bring them good information. So sometimes, like, you'll present, maybe even you're going for the second chance, they listen to you once, but you're not being invited back in. Okay. So, but if you come at them with wisdom, they value wisdom. Is that your brand? Oh, you know, it's Joe, it's Jane calling. They probably have some good ideas for me. So is wisdom part of your brand? And how do you use it in your selling? Now, process, of course, is critical. So how do you use your wisdom in the standard sales call? Let's review the standard sales call for a moment. There are 3 parts. 1 to 7 is how you warm up the conversation and go from safe to serious. You know, all conversations are either safe or serious. Safe means you're never going to get a stick of business. You know, it's probably a price check. And serious means the prospect has an urgent, compelling need and they're willing to discuss it. So serious doesn't mean you close. Serious means you opened. Once you warm up the customer, you have a decent shot of doing your fact finding, including the closing conditions, the series of conditions which, when met, result in the sale. And once you know the closing conditions, you can determine, is there a fit, and can you meet it, and can you close the sale? So you're going to do research in the beginning, which will help identify which wisdom you're going to use as you reach out to the prospect. Let me give you an example of a type of wisdom that could be a good freebie. We were talking about Coca-Cola. Here's a SWOT analysis on them. The company, you see their market line upper right-hand corner, they charge at least $175 for this SWOT analysis. Well, if you get online, like I did with my library, they subscribe to this, and you could download these for free. So this could help you prepare for your call. Now, this is for bigger companies, not for small companies. Well, you say, okay, that's good. But Coke really want to see their own SWOT analysis? Maybe yes, maybe no, but what would be wrong with showing them Pepsi's SWOT analysis? So this is an example. You go online, you do an EBSCO search, you could pull these down. This is one small example of doing research to show value and get your foot back in the door. Now, selling with wisdom sets up the kind of questions you're going to ask, including at the end, what were your takeaways, to help you identify the closing conditions and how far you've gone in meeting them. Another important question here as you set up for the second chance is the sales culture. Is the sales culture right? Now, broadly speaking, there are two kinds of relationships we form: social relationships and business relationships. In my experience, in some cases, salespeople lean a little bit too much to the social relationship, be my friend, as opposed to the business relationship, let me earn the right to your profitable business. So sometimes we need a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift is the and, not the or, because, when we're too focused on social selling and not enough on business selling, when social selling dominates, what happens is we get few new customers and we don't get the second chance, because you have to be willing to challenge the customer's thinking. So it's not enough to have all the tools. You have to have bold vision, bold behavior for this to work. So again, process is critical. We talked about 3 parts to the standard sales call, and we've been looking at using wisdom to become a trusted advisor. Now, the wisdom is not self-serving. They could consume it without doing business with you. One of its great values is it sets up the splash, which is the self-serving statement. How do you know you're making progress? Watch the PIK, the payment in kind. The payment in kind shows that the prospect is engaged. So if you're just doing business with somebody new, a PIK showing they're engaged, that it's not a spectator but a participant sport, the prospect fills out a credit application or introduces you to their boss. When you're going for the second chance, a great PIK could just be being invited in for a meeting. Now, the idea of the splash are the hot button issues that are going to excite your prospect, or in this case, the second chance. It's how we make a material difference, a difference so strong that it motivates a change in behavior. Now, let me show you some of the strong statements for a client that did billing and collecting for martial arts studios. Did you know? Did you know our typical client grows 20% a year? Did you know that we save 5 to 8 hours a week for 75 students? We reduce bankruptcy risk 95%. We eliminate errors, save $2,000 to $3,000 a year, and we help you get and retain your fair share of the best students. Using the freebies, using messaging like this, and some other things, the proving, etc., we took a 20% closing ratio on company-generated leads to 40%. We doubled the closing ratio. Now, very often when you present, the prospect will come back at you and say your price is too high. So if you show all of your hot button material difference issues at once, they anchor their value to what you show. Whoops. So what we want to do is maybe hold back 1 point or 2 points. This is a negotiating tactic. You don't show everything at once, and then when they tell you your price is too high, you say, well, what about getting and retaining the fair share of best students? Now, the same thing is true in preparing for the second chance. If you're holding things back, it helps you set up the second chance because now you're bringing a new value into play. How do you organize all this stuff? What you see on the right hand of the screen is the table of contents of the brainstorming book. It's about 150 pages. It documents the whole standard sales call. And at the bottom are appendices that have examples of freebies, research, splash, etc., and proving. Information, if you want a copy of the table of contents, send me an email after the seminar. Obviously, an important part of the messaging is how did we improve since you threw us out? For example, we have new control systems, we have new products and services, new team members. We've changed our culture to better align with you. So you need to show the customer how you changed. But sometimes when we tell them how we improved and they're being skeptical, they say that they don't believe us. Then what do? With that 100-year-old company, the salespeople said, well, Andy, what do? They're telling us they don't believe we improved. I said, I can't do anything, but you can. Get testimonials. What? We can't get testimonials. Go to clients who tossed us out, brought us back to write a testimonial. That's what we did. And you know what? We got the testimonials, and it helped us open new customers. So again, process is critical. The one last thing I'll mention to you, and I find it's not done very often, is core value alignment. First, you do the research, and then it helps you establish the business relationship. Sticking with the Coca-Cola example, if you go to the website, here are their statements about core values. So showing the customer that we now align with their core values is very powerful to getting the second chance. And you typically could find this on just about anybody's website, any customer's website. So a way to summarize this is that selling is kind of like painting a wall. What you see on the screen now are two different painters preparing to paint the wall. The one on the left is doing all the prep work. The one on the right does nothing. At first, they look the same. It looks like a nice painted wall, which is like a sales call looks the same in the beginning, but what happens over time? The one on the left holds, the one on the right is a disaster. Which wall do you prepare when you prepare for a sales call? Now, some positive outcomes from doing this kind of process. You'll close more profitable business. You'll have a replicable process. You'll be in better control. It prepares you for black swan events, and it sets up the second chance. A review of the key ideas that we discussed today. It's a great business strategy to always plan for the second chance. Solid business practices, doing them day in, day out, help you prepare. In particular, wisdom-based selling should be a key part of your brand. So we lead with the freebie, with the wisdom, and the non-self-serving information, and then it opens the customer to hear what we have to say and be prepared to prove. Also, you need culture, a combination of both social and business relationships. Well, we know Rome wasn't built in a day, so we're almost at the end of today's webinar. In a moment, I'm going to open it up for some questions, so please use the chat if you have questions. You might want to think about your takeaways, if any. If you want any of the content, you have any questions, please send it to me at andyg@urgencybasedselling.net. By the way, our next big seminar will be on 4/17, Surviving a Tough Budget, Do or Die Accountability, the sales team as heroes, how to be a heroic salesperson and survive a tough budget. So now we have some time for questions. And by the way, if you want information about salesperson branding or improving innovation or my first book, Innovate Now, a free consulting session for 30 minutes, please write to me at urgencybasedselling.net. Okay, do we have any questions now? Let's see. I'm new at selling. How do I get this wisdom you discuss, and how do I know what is important? This is a reason why, this is a great team activity, getting your wisdom lined up. getting the sales team together and sharing. That would be one way. And if you're in a very small sales team and you're calling on and you have existing customers, you could find this sort of thing out just from talking to customers. Where did you get those SWOT reports? Could you please repeat how you got them? So you get lined up online research with your library. You have to have a library card, in my case at least. You go in once to set it up, password and username, and then you do what's called an EBSCO, E-B-S-C-O, an EBSCO search, and you put in the name of the company and SWOT, S-W-O-T, as your search parameters. We focus on delighting customers, not challenging them. What do we do if the selling culture isn't one where we challenge prospects? Well, that is an issue, and it probably will take some time to adjust the culture if that's something you want to do. Here's an idea that could get you started. Every week, get the team together and ask this question: what was the boldest behavior you did this week? Are testimonials so important, particularly in this age of Google reviews and LinkedIn endorsements? Well, we have another webinar we do on proving. I think testimonials make a difference when they're strong anecdotal cases. When in other words, it's like a case review. But for anyone who's interested, send me an email and I'll show you how it's part of the four-step proving process. It grounds the rest of the process with a specific example. Salespeople get very discouraged when we lose a customer through non-performance. How do you get through to the salesperson to keep them motivated? Boy, that's a tough question. I could tell you from previous experience with non-performance of factories. I had a sales agency for 10 years. It was just a killer if we didn't ship and I lost a customer. I don't think there's an easy answer to that. But depending on I will give you I think that's a conversation we should have offline, but I will make this observation. I've worked with companies where it was like a design for failure. It was very challenging, the assignments they took on. For instance, one was an importer from Taiwan of packaging with very short lead times. It was a design for failure. I had another client who would take an assignment on Monday from a pharmaceutical company to create 5,000 kits by Friday and then drop ship them directly to 5,000 different locations. Again, very difficult to execute. So I do want to make a comment about those scenarios if you're taking on very difficult assignments, because I remember in both cases I was in over a year with the client, and the salespeople were really upset. When we didn't perform, we lost the customer. They'll never talk to us again. And because I was there long enough, I found like 3 months later the customer was doing business again. And I think the reason is because they gave the other guy or gal a chance. And it's tough to execute, and sometimes you mess up. So if you're in a business where the execution is really, really tough, take heart. The other guys and gals out there are also probably having challenges, and you may get your day in court sooner than you think. Well, I guess that's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. Please join us in a month where our next webinar is how to survive a tough budget. And reach out to me if you have any questions from you. Bye now.